Hi everyone, I know many of you like from Facebook and such, and thanks to TJ for having me. I appreciate you inviting me. So I'm going to talk about short-term rentals, and short-term rentals in particular in central New York. And I'm going to really focus on the angle of like how you can help your clients who are interested in short-term rentals. So if you're interested in short-term rentals too, like this obviously applies, but my focus is really like how to help investors or even homeowners that want to rent out their vacation home or whatever as short-term rentals on the side. So that's going to be the main focus. So just a little bit about me. I've been in the short-term rental space for around 3 years, so not that long. But what I noticed when I launched my first short-term rental, which was my own property, is that not only do you have to like own an asset, you also have to build a hospitality business. And if you're working with investors and clients, like most people don't want to build a hospitality business. They just want to have cash flow, appreciation, tax benefits, right? Like they don't want to worry about, I'm going to, talk to the maids, the cleaners. I'm going to like worry about vendors. I'm going to worry about disputes. They don't want to think about that kind of stuff. So I formed it because I realized there was a void of that, right? There was like a void of people that could completely turn a short-term rental back into passive income for investors. So the idea is enjoy the margins of short-term rentals, but kind of make it passive because our company handles pretty much everything. So, but along the way, I learned a lot and had a lot of bumps and bruises. So by the way, I have kind of wacky humor. So a lot of this is kind of silly, so bear with me here. So what I'm gonna do just to start a little bit about like our last year to kind of show you what the numbers look like in Syracuse. So our lowest earning property did $20,000 more than the local comparable. So we use, have you guys heard of AirDNA? So it's a platform that allows you to look at comps for strictly short-term rental space, right? Like what the properties are doing locally. So this is the average for a 3-bedroom. The bathroom count doesn't matter as much, but average for a 3-bedroom is around $26,500 a year. And this is our lowest earning property, did 47 and a half. Our next one did 53, and our next one did around 57 last year. So just to show you that when we say professional management, the idea is to help investors make more money, right? We have a very revenue-based approach. And so I'm gonna kind of like rush through this whole presentation so we can have time to do questions at the end. And obviously you guys can connect with me at the end as well, and we can chat a little bit about it. So I'm gonna break it down into a profit formula, which you can help when you're talking to your clients, you can help explain, hey, if you have these 6 elements in your short-term rental, you have a higher probability of being profitable. So professional management. So the data actually shows that professional management increases revenue by 20% on a short-term rental. And this is just because professional management companies spend all their time nerding out over, how the money works, how the pictures work, how the setup and design works. So our like lowest property did 70% greater than the market, but professional management in general tends to make people more money. Revenue management. So revenue management is basically pricing, right? Like setting your pricing. And if you're coming from a space where folks are used to long-term rentals, this is going to be really confusing to people. Like they're probably going to ask you questions about the revenue management. But revenue management really is, you need to have like a really strategic approach that allows you to track the other properties in the area and try to match their pricing. And then there's also tools called dynamic pricing, which allow you to pretty much like competitively undercut competition at the right time. So the tool I use allows you to get bookings between 2 stays, right? Say you have like vacancy between 2 stays, you want to get those days filled so that you still have revenue coming in. So you need to have a great revenue management strategy. Out of this world amenities. Sounds kind of obvious, but so many people kind of like shoot themselves in the foot. They try to go budget, especially if they're used to the long-term rental strategy. And really the winning properties, the properties that are going to completely crush it, are the ones that have better amenities than the competition. So this is a situation where it's don't reinvent the wheel. Go into your local, Airbnb market, find the top 5 best properties and one-up them. Look at all the amenities they offer better amenities, right? Like match their amenities and offer better ones.
Give us an example of some of those amenities.
Yeah, so I mean, the big one that everyone asks about is hot tubs, right? They're like, should I have a hot tub in my property? And so, you know, when you're looking at that kind of amenity, you want to look at what's in the area. In this market, there's not too many places with hot tubs. So you know you're automatically going to have a leg up by offering that amenity, right? So, but other amenities could be like yard games, like board games, a game room, offering bikes, kayaks if you're lakefront. Like any amenities, like, you know, from the realtor perspective, you think of amenities as like, you know, furnace and all that. It's not like those basic amenities. It's like the things that create an experience, that make it fun, that make it memorable for people. So those are the kind of amenities you want to add. And you really want to go over the top. So if you have time to look up a company called TechVestor, they're a really big STR investment fund, and they pretty much do what we call a super property, right? A super property is a property that's like almost resort-like, over the top, right? They have mini golf in the backyard, pools, hot tubs, playgrounds, you know, a little bowling alley section, theaters in the basement. Super properties will always be in the top 10 percentile, right? So you're more cash up front in your investment, but you're always going to win because you have more amenities. And the thought behind that is that Airbnb is making this shift, but short-term rentals in general are making the shift towards experiential based, right? If you want a place to stay, you'll book a hotel, right? If you want a place just to sleep, you'll book a hotel. If you want a place to have an experience, you'll book a short-term rental. So Airbnb is pushing hard at this, and you can see that they've done this by their front page now. You go to Airbnb and their front page is a tree house, right? Like a yurt. It's always like something really experiential. It's not just a place to sleep. So functional comfort. So to cover the functional aspect is the easier the experience is for the guest, the better reviews you're gonna get. So you wanna take out any complexities, right? Like we use the simplest lock set so that their check-in is easy. If they're fumbling with a lock, if they have to call your neighbor for a key, you know, there's a key under a rock by the third bush, anything that makes it complicated is gonna lead to a negative experience. So I think of functionality from every aspect, even the coffee machines. Like some Keurigs have like, instead of saying brew, they say 8 ounce and 12 ounce. That's a complexity. So like, how do I brew? Like, how do I actually like make a cup of coffee? It just says the ounces on it. So you want to think of complete functionality so that everything is easy. And the other reason you want to do this is, you know, not only will the guests have a better experience if everything is easier to use, but you'll have a better experience. Like if you're managing these yourself, you will, or the owners are that you're working with, because they're going to constantly be bugging you. Hey, how do I turn on the hot tub bubbles? You know, if it's like you need an engineering degree to get that going, that's the wrong one to buy. Don't buy that one. Buy the one with 2 buttons, right? 2 buttons and 4 jets, right? As simple as possible. So, and then the comfort one is self-explanatory. But I'll give an example. I was just at a resort in Florida, and it was great. It was enjoyable. But the whole place was LVP flooring, not a single rug, not a single throw on the couch, not a single pillow, like 3 pieces of art and stark white walls and stark white lights, right? Like no matter what I could do, I would never have a cozy movie night. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't get comfortable in that space just because it's like easy to clean and practical for the cleaners and stuff, but not really a great experience. So that's where the comfort comes in. Like you want people to feel like I could feel at home here, like I could feel cozy here. So think about functionality, think about comfort. Incredible decor. So the statistic for decor is 20 to 30% higher revenue for properties that have a heavy decor focus. Like that's pretty crazy. And actually I saw another study that said 50% higher revenue than the competition if you have a high decor focus. So this is another thing you don't want to skimp out on, right? Like some of you probably have a creative touch and would maybe take this on yourself, or maybe your clients have that creative touch and they could do it. Me personally, I am a creative person, but I still want to trust a professional to decorate and set up the place. And so, you know, you're going to pay them for that, right? But it's very much worth it because your revenue is going to be significantly higher. So some examples for decor. A lot of folks think of decor like they would their own house. And I do not recommend that. You want the property to like literally like reach out of the phone and slap them in the face, right? Like you want it to be so bold and bright and colorful that they can't help but click it. As soon as you get a click, you're more likely to convert that that person checking out your listing. So if you're decorating a place and say you're doing it yourself, just go as bold as possible. Like, have you guys heard of the maximalist design style? Yeah, it's like insanely colorful. Like it's god awful. I mean, like I would never live in a property that had maximalist design, but that's really trending right now because, again, pops of color. If you're scrolling along Airbnb and you have neutral colors, minimalist colors, neutral colors, and suddenly you have this like bright first picture, you're gonna be like, I gotta click that, you know? So go bold with decor. The more bold you go, the better. And lastly is tech forward. So, you know, vacation rentals have existed for a long time. It's not like a new thing, right? Like it used to be your grandma had a cottage and her neighbor gave her cash and they would stay at her cottage and they'd be like, thanks, I had a great time, I'll come again next year. Airbnb just created a middle kind of point where we could connect to the masses, basically, right? Where the technology could help connect vacation rentals to the masses. So obviously it's not a new industry, but the technology is kind of what made it new. The ability to, you know, Airbnb essentially markets your listing for you. So because of this, the entire industry is extremely like technologically advanced. So to give you an example, I use 5 softwares for every property I manage, like 5 different softwares per property to help with the revenue, to help with scheduling vendors, to help with guest communication. So embrace that technology because that's really what's gonna enhance the guest experience, but also enhance your experience or your client's experience with short-term rentals. And this kind of goes back to the functionality thing, right? If you have great technology, it'll allow you to communicate better, it'll allow the check-in experience to go better, it'll make a better experience for your guest, which will lead to better reviews.
So are those, that formulas, something that you do, like you would help? Let's just say I went and bought a short-term rental, but you're obviously the expertise with the experts, so you could say, yeah, like you'll go with my credit card and buy the amenities, you'll go and buy the decor and stuff like that? Is that something?
So I'm actually not doing setup services right now, but I have multiple vendors and connections that are. Okay. Setup is really a lot. I think I will eventually, but I'm kind of really trying to like, you know, perfect the management aspect of it. But yeah, but that is a big question too, because that's one of the biggest pain points, right? Is like, hey, I'm gonna drop, you know, 20, 30K to furnish and renovate the yard and all that. Most folks, especially like say you're working with a surgeon, right? They have money, they wanna invest in an asset, they don't necessarily have the time to make all that happen. So getting that all set up is definitely super time intensive. All right, so basically like this kind of sums up the profit formula. Amazing decor and amenities plus professional management equals a top producing property. You could also say professional execution, right? Like think of it as a business. Think of it as a hospitality business. Don't just think of it as an asset. If you can think of this in the entire process of getting into the short-term rental space, you're gonna be on top. So, common fears to address when you're talking with clients. These are based on things that I'm asked all the time in the short-term rental space. So what about parties, right? I'm sure you guys have all thought about parties with Airbnbs, right? It's kind of like the thing everyone always talks about. So the reason I had a shark up there is I like the shark in the ocean analogy. So basically, when you swim in the ocean, like you've all thought about a shark at one point, right? When you swim in the ocean. How many of you have been bitten by a shark? Like not very many, right? So like it's a fear that's been blown out of proportion, right? So and the chances of that actually happening are quite slim. So I've had a single party that I had to like knock on the door and call the police in 3 years, a single one. Now that doesn't mean guests try to sneak in extra guests or bring an extra dog or make a mess sometimes, but in terms of like a rager, you know, smoke pouring out of the door, which is what this one was. Yeah, that was interesting when the neighbors called me. So that being said, it's not as big a fear as it's made out to be. And then you can screen guests extremely thoroughly, just as thoroughly as you can for long-term rentals, right? So back to the tech solutions, there are several softwares that allow you to collect a waiver or a deposit from each guest, and you can automate it. So every time they book, it sends them a link, they click it, they pay $35, it covers you for $500 of damage, right? There's services that do that. And you can also screen guests like as far as, you know, as deep as like criminal history, credit check and everything. So you can screen guests the same exact way with a couple of different software solutions, and I can point you in the right direction if you are ever looking at that. But you can screen guests quite thoroughly, and the Airbnb platform is extremely review-based, right? So like same for hosts, but also same for guests. So you can, that's the first kind of like, the first approach is screen them through the app and see, guest checked out 3 hours late without letting us know, or, guest left a ginormous mess or whatever. So it's too much work, which, yeah, it is too much work. It's a lot, but it's worth it. So I'm gonna tell you some of the benefits of the short-term rental space and why your clients would want to get into the space, or why you yourselves would want to get into the space. So the first one is that as of now, they're kind of doing some different policy work to maybe change this, but you can write off in year one, you can write off 60% of the purchase and setup cost of your short-term rental against your W-2 income, right? Or against your main job income. 60%, like that's crazy. So you can seriously offset your taxes in year one, which if you're working with investors, everyone's trying to decrease their taxes, right? That's one of the main things. Another benefit of short-term rentals is you can stay in it, right? Like a great strategy for someone trying to get into this space is to use a vacation home loan or a second home loan, which is like, 10% down or even less sometimes. Buy the space, decorate it, use it a few times a year for yourself, and then cash flow the rest of the year, right? So that's the way that a lot of people dip their toe in this space, right? Is like buying a vacation home and doing that. Another reason it's worth it is we live in New York State, and tenant laws are pretty rough if you're an investor, right? So I'm sure you guys in the space you're in have dealt with that a lot, where evictions are hard, they take 6 months, it's definitely a pain point in this, and that's actually why I got into this space myself. The property I own, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a stab at this, I have no clue what I'm doing. I just dived right in, but I was tired of evictions, I was tired of having like really rough guests, holdovers, multiple people owe me tens of thousands of dollars at this time, But yeah, so that's another benefit of short-term rentals. And will it make money? So if you're getting like folks from the long-term rental space, the big fear, and this is the fear I felt too when I first got into it, is, what happens when someone doesn't book it? Like what happens in those empty spaces, right? Or what if I only get one booking? My answer to that is ultimately the answer is knowledge, like knowing what you're getting into is the best answer. But if you follow the profit formula, you're gonna do pretty well, right? You think of, again, the hospitality business side of it. You have an asset, but you have to also think of the hospitality business. So follow that profit formula, it will certainly do well. And there's other tools like AirDNA that I showed you to find the comps, to see give or take so you can underwrite the deal. But obviously know your numbers as well. So part of what I'm offering you guys today is to help you do free property analysis. So here's an example of the tool I use. And what you do is you put the address in, and it pulls from AirDNA. It also pulls from this other site, AirBtix, I don't know how to pronounce that, and gives you kind of a projected revenue and projected profit, cash flow, and cash on cash return. And it goes way more in depth. Like this report will also give you potential tax savings in year one, right? So you have an investor who's wanting to get in the space, they have a chunk of money they need to park somewhere, and then you can pitch them, hey, you could buy a multi-unit, you could also buy a short-term rental and offset your taxes by X amount. Like that's really powerful, right? Especially if you're working with investors. It also breaks down setup expenses. So not necessarily renovations, like you'd probably have to get someone to give you quotes for renovations, but it breaks down furnishing expenses either by price per square foot or per room. So it completely can give someone a picture who's like, hey, I want to invest in this space. It can give them a full picture of like, here's how much cash I'll need, here's my return, here's when I make my money back, here's the tax offset that's going to happen if I invest in short-term rentals. So pretty much, and I'm also offering a referral bonus. So if you guys send me someone that wants to own a short-term rental but doesn't want to do all the management side, and I sign them on, I'll pay you a referral bonus for this, right? So just send me the person and we'll work it out. And if I end up signing them on, I'll send you this finder's fee here. So this is my QR code. If you guys want to scan it, it has my contact information on it. And that's pretty much my entire presentation. I know I kind of rushed through it, so we can maybe do some questions and go from there.
So, you're not a lawyer, but I'll ask you this question.
Uh-oh.
Is it,
I'm nervous now.
is it true that you cannot short-term rental a 2-unit property if you're not living in it?
That depends on the city you're in, but in Syracuse, there's no regulations.
Okay.
Yeah. So, regulations is another thing that people often present about when folks are first getting into this space. But since our area has very few regulations on short-term rentals, I didn't really want to cover it because I was assuming most of your clients are local. Skinny Atlas has some policies on short-term rentals, and the town of Salina has some policies, nothing under 30 days in the town of Salina. So you can't actually do short-term rentals if it's anything in that area. You can only do like midterm rentals, travel nurses, that kind of thing. So.
How do you do that? 'Cause that's where I am, and that's where I'm trying to figure out if we do long-term or short-term, but we know that we can't put it on Airbnb, so.
Because you're in Liverpool?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question is how do you.
Like what was that alternative option you said?
It's called midterm rentals. So midterm rentals is anything from like a month to 3 months, but oftentimes they extend their contract. And so Upstate Hospital is one of the largest, is one of like the hot spots for travel nurses. And travel nurses have like a housing stipend typically. They can pay significant amount of monthly rent, and it's a convenient service, right? The place is fully furnished. We pay all the utilities, we pay all the Wi-Fi. You literally just come and you pay me a monthly amount.
Can you list those on Airbnb? So you
Yep.
obviously the limit's longer.
Exactly, yep. You can list those on Airbnb, and what you would do is you would set your minimum stays. So say you are in the town of Salina, you can still list on Airbnb with a minimum stay of 30 days or whatever. I mean, you like call the county and make sure, call them and make sure it's right. But yeah, you can still list on Airbnb. And there's another platform called Furnish Finder, which is just a listing platform. It's not a booking platform. So people like travel nurses can't book directly through there. So it's a listing service. It's like $100 a year to list a property. And, at that point they reach out to you. It's very similar to a long-term rental at that point. You basically reach out back and forth, you screen them, you get a deposit, you get a lease.
Is that for, you said fully furnished?
Yes, for midterms they're typically fully furnished.
Do you find that they usually prefer that?
Yes. Travel nurses don't look for vacant apartments typically because they're only here for 3 months. They're not gonna go spend 20 grand on their own to furnish a place. Some of them stay at hotels, but they much prefer Airbnbs because then they can cook their meals and have a backyard for their dogs. Like a lot of them are like single ladies with dogs. So they want a yard, right? They want to cook, they want to hang out, they want to be comfortable in their own home. So, yeah, that's a great question.
What are the top 5, keep yourself out of trouble? The reason I asked this, I saw your post about the mattress people. So
Yeah.
What are the things that people complain about that you can cut off and take care of in advance with proper planning?
Yeah, so the biggest thing with short-term rentals in general is setting expectations, right? So it's extremely important that you are transparent about all of the flaws of your listing, right? So every listing has some kind of flaw. Maybe it's the next door neighbors are close, like the house is close. So, maybe you have to go up 2 flights of stairs to get to the bedrooms. Whatever the thing is that's gonna make it inconvenient, right? That's gonna make it difficult for people, you wanna disclose as much as possible. The more you disclose, the better. So I have, the properties I showed you are city properties. By the way, those aren't even vacation rental properties, they're city properties. The data for actual vacation rental properties, lakefronts and stuff, is a lot higher, probably in the 80K a year gross revenue. These are just ones I've managed the longest, so I wanted to use those. But yeah, you want to really just close things as much as possible and be in great communication with guests to avoid those things. But to some degree, guest complaints are unavoidable to a certain extent. So, but transparency is key, right? So my point about my city properties is, hey, this is a burgeoning and up and coming neighborhood. You find all the language right. When you guys do listings, you do this. Cozy means small. So you do all that stuff, right? You try to disclose as much as possible. Hey, this is an urban property. If you're coming for a gated neighborhood experience, this is not going to be the right fit for you. And then the guests who then are expecting that experience love it. Because they're oh yeah, I love being in the city. I love being in the hustle and bustle. The guests who are not expecting it and that transparency isn't there get frustrated. So, yeah.
What is you're talking 80K a year in annual revenue.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of that goes to the booking sites, Airbnb and VRBO,
Yep.
and then what percentage do you charge? I assume
Yep.
it's a percentage of revenue.
Yep, that's a great question. So Airbnb takes around 15% total. Yeah, it's a lot. So that pretty much they take around 12% from the guests. And so it's, you know, it goes directly to Airbnb from the guest, right? And then you pay the rest of it, like 3-ish% per booking. They're trying to.
But you're still counting that cost that they are paying Airbnb in your revenues, correct?
Actually, no, because they pull it out before before it's your gross.
So that's $80K a year in annual revenue, and then you've got 3% going to Airbnb.
No, they take it out before that comes to you. So that $80K is after they've taken out their fees. Yeah. So, and then, you know, just transparently, this market is moderate, but it's an up and coming market. This guy named Kenny Bedwell, he owns STR Insights. He's like a real data nerd, listed this as like an up and coming short-term rental market because of SU, but obviously like Micron and the changes with that are probably gonna have some implications that grow the area economically, and I think we'll have some midterm guests coming for that. And I think we'll just have growth in general, which brings more people, and yeah. So, and then your other question was like, what would I charge? Yeah, so I charge 22% after the cleaning fee. So the cleaning fee goes from the cleaner, from the guest directly to the cleaner, and then after that I charge 22% of gross. Yeah.
Can you explain? I don't follow that, sorry.
Yeah, totally. So, you know, really rough numbers, if the property does 10K in a month, after expenses and stuff, the owner gets paid out around 75, give or take, depending on how bad expenses are, and then I take the rest as a management fee.
Expenses being what?
Toilet paper, paper towels, welcome
so
snacks.
You handle all of that?
Yeah, so I handle ordering all of that, but it's billed to the owner.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So, but like, yeah. So my service in particular is like a completely done for you service. Like when I said in the beginning, the reason I started this business is to make short-term rentals passive. Other than setup and design, which I don't currently handle, once the property is handed over to me and has like met all of our checklist of what we need as a management company, literally the only thing I ever reach out to an owner for is a CapEx type emergency, right? The roof is leaking, HVAC has gone out, something big like that, right? Everything else, including like small maintenance, small everything. So it's really, I truly aim, you know, actually I'm looking at your vision board there about being the #1 real estate office in Central New York. Like that's my goal as a short-term rental company, is to be the #1 short-term rental company in Central New York. I think I'm pretty close, but maybe I'm just, you know, blowing myself up. But yeah,
Well,
so.
I know a lot of really great agents who could help you with the sales and design, so maybe we should be like affiliate.
Yeah, totally. And that's actually kind of like why I created my referral program, is I'm trying to like get some like synergetic energy with other people that are already in the space going, right? Where it's like, you know, we basically take care of each other, right? Like it helps you close a deal and it helps me get a client, right? It works really well that way. Yeah.
How many do you manage right now?
13 right now. Yep. So we just launched our newest one. It's up on Onondaga Hill. And I'm really excited. It's probably going to be, you know, like I said, these properties weren't vacation properties. Like my properties coming up this next year are like going to be a lot better revenue because I think just because I'm building momentum. So a lot of owners are like trusting my consultations, right? When I'm like, hey, you should do a full backyard. Like you should do a fire pit. You should do a hot tub. You should do, you know, string lights. You should do all these things to make it more interesting. And so this new listing, we have a full game room in the garage. It's really epic. We have a full amazing backyard. So it's really gonna crush the competition and do really well. So I'm pretty pumped about it.
Is
So
it just like Onondaga County?
it's like right across from OCC. You know how there's like 2 roads you can go to OCC? There's like the Turnpike one and then there's a one below. It's on that street. I can't remember it's Onondaga Road. Yeah.
But you only manage in Onondaga County? Like your property?
Nope. I manage. So yeah, to show you my region. So I manage all the way up to the Thousand Islands. So I managed a property there last year, and the owner actually decided to sell it. And so I already have like all my teams and stuff built up there, which is great.
What about in the Adirondacks?
Yes, I haven't managed in the Adirondacks. Yeah. Yeah, no, I haven't managed in the Adirondacks, but I do manage in the Adirondacks. And then as far south as the Poconos. So I managed 5 in the Poconos pretty recently. And then I also have 1 in the southern tier in Deposit, which is like Delaware has like the Delaware River is like a famous fly fishing area. So we have a house right on the river there. So it's kind of like if you think of like a north and south strip from Thousand Islands down kind of like to the Poconos region. I mean, I'll probably expand beyond that eventually. And that kind of goes back to like the embracing technology. With short-term rental management, you can automate and create such great systems that you don't need to physically be at the site all the time. So to give you an example, my first property I ever launched is literally 2 blocks from my primary residence. I've stepped foot in it once last year, like a single time. So because we have systems in place, right? We have a great cleaning team. I have a local property manager that does quality inspections, that orders my supplies, so like I've built enough systems that me physically being somewhere is not a barrier, right? We do quarterly inspections as well. So we'll have like a handyman do quarterly inspections to make sure the properties are up to snuff. So.
Is that quarterly inspection included in your 22%? Like that's something that you guys do? Or
No. No, and
put that expense off to us like you do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the inspection is $75, so it's not bad. Because someone basically needs to take an hour out of their day and walk through the place and, hey, Merritt, this light bulb's out, and this carpet needs replaced, and that kind of thing. I have a pricing document that might be helpful. So if you scan my contact, reach out to me, I can send it to you. It breaks down everything that is included in my services and then what is billed to the owner. So it's a really clear breakdown, and I'm a very visual person, so like just verbally saying it all. But pretty much the main thing that I cover is I cover all the technology costs. So all of the subscriptions and the 5 different apps I use to automate and create my system, I cover. And obviously, all of my own team I cover, and I pay for the cleaners because it goes directly from the guest to the cleaners. And then all other expenses, it's actually very similar to traditional property management, right? Like if they go in and do a repair, they'll bill you for that repair in that same way. Yep.
Do you have anyone that's like the property owner themselves does some of that stuff for you and you work with them as opposed to recruiting someone from your team to take care of it?
Like what specific stuff?
Like if the owner wanted to do their own like quarterly inspection, for example.
Yeah.
Or like if they want to go in to see what materials they need or.
Absolutely.
Like
Yes. Yeah. So the pricing document will be super helpful because I even break down optional services, right? So like lawn care and snow. I can pay my team or my vendors, or you can pay your vendors, right? So like I break that down as like what expenses I can, and I also say like even the bigger CapEx stuff like renovations, we can do it for a fee, but like it's not built into our regular management, right? So like say it's like we want to do a kitchen renovation, well I can oversee it for my similar fee for like 20%, right? On top of whatever the vendor charges you, or you can oversee it, right? So, but yeah, that pricing document will be helpful because it breaks down, everything that's included and stuff that's optional. So I also do have like a listing fee that I do, and it helps us get all those softwares going. And I didn't put this in the thing, but like I'll knock money off of that for people in this room as well too. So not for your clients, for you specifically. your clients, you'll get $1,000 for the client, but if it's you personally, I'll knock a little bit off the listing fee. So any other questions?
I just have a quick question. You mentioned like the evaluation of a property.
Yeah.
That like AirDNA.
Yep.
When you say that you're willing to do that, is that like a proprietary software that
Yeah.
you use that does that? Gotcha.
Yeah, so I use a proprietary software that's actually my mentor. I'm in a mastermind.
Gotcha.
Him and a partner created the software. I think it's the best in the industry, honestly, because it gleans from multiple sources and creates like the most comprehensive data set, but it also creates a data set that's easy to read, right? So like when you're working with clients, you're probably not gonna wanna show them like super in-depth stuff unless they're already an experienced investor, right? Like appreciation, over the next 10 years. Like most people probably won't look at that unless they're a very experienced investor. What they really want to see is the bottom line, right? Like what's the cash flow? What are my expenses? And if you can show them that, typically that's enough to get someone, all right, I'm interested in doing this. Like I'm interested in buying this vacation property. So yeah, it's a great tool. And then I also, like when I do my analysis, I also use my local knowledge, right? So like, for example, I know that the comp for Syracuse is around 30K a year. But I know that like if I consult someone when they do the setup and design, that it's going to be far more than that, right? If they use my services especially. So I use my knowledge in a blend with that analysis to send that report. And what's cool too is like I can send it as a link or I can send it as a PDF. So really helpful. And like all you literally have to do is shoot me over an address, I run it, send it to you, and if there's any kind of like anomalies in there, I'll explain them. So I comped a rural property in Lafayette recently, and there weren't enough comp sets to show short-term rental data. So I kind of had to go old fashioned and look at all the comps listings in the nearby 30-mile radius and go that way. So.
What about like, so the property that I have in mind now is a 9-unit motel currently, but they have shut down the motel and they're gonna turn it into short-term
Yeah.
rentals. Would you be able to comp something like
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yeah, the boutique hotel motel model is really popular right now. You know, and it's more cost effective because renovating 9 units the exact same way, right? With the one design team on site, it's just your ROI is going to be better at the end of the day. So that, yeah, I could for sure comp something like that, and that's a great model. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for having me.